Back about 20 years ago or so, I was playing music in Orange County, California back in my musician days. After the show, I remember talking to a guy and I was telling him that I'm from Atlanta, and he was like, "Oh man, that's pretty cool. Atlanta is a big city, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you guys have a lot of paved roads out there?" And it was my answer to him, I guess, was apparently really shocking. I said, "Yes, we actually do have a lot of paved roads." And at that time, there was around 4 million people in Atlanta, and it just blew his mind. He was so surprised that we had a bunch of paved roads. If you have watched the news at all very much recently, you know that there are a lot of people leaving California for other states, mostly Texas, Florida, and Georgia. And I've spent a lot of time traveling over my years, especially back in the music industry, but I've spent a ton of time in California, Southern California, Northern California, all over. I actually have a lot of family from California. And of course, I've lived in Georgia for the past 20 plus years or so. So in this video, I'm going to be talking all about differences and similarities of Georgia and California. I hope you enjoy this video. Let's jump into it. Hey everybody, my name is Tim Gibson and I'm a realtor in North Georgia. And my video is all about living in North Georgia. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And of course, if you are thinking about moving to the area, please reach out. My contact info is right here on the screen. Before we get started, I want to give you a disclaimer. We are talking about 2 states. These are going to be really broad topics. There's no way I can give you all the info about both states in one YouTube video, or we'd be here all day. Of course, this is going to not be a very in-depth video, but if there's anything that I didn't touch on or didn't go too in-depth on that you'd like more info on, please leave me a comment. I'll be happy to research that for you. But again, you know, it's impossible to talk about 2 entire states in depth in one YouTube video, but we're going to do the best we can, and I'm sure you'll have some good info at the end of this. Like I mentioned, both states are huge, California especially. Looks like California is somewhere around 160,000 square miles, and Georgia is about 59 to about 60,000 square miles. And as far as economy goes, this is a stat that I've always heard on the news. I always found it really interesting. California's economy is the largest economy in the United States. We're somewhere around like $3.6 trillion, which makes it the 5th largest economy in the world, which is behind Germany, but ahead of India, which has over 1 billion people in population. And by contrast, Georgia is somewhere around $692 billion, which I'm pretty sure places that somewhere in the top 30 largest economies in the world. Not bad, but not even close to California. Now, we are contrasting 2 states that really could not be more opposite. Obviously, the population of California is way larger. It's about triple the size of Georgia. California's population is somewhere around 39 million, almost 40 million people, and Georgia's is somewhere around 11 million. As you can see, of course, I know you guys love it when I talk about politics, but politically, the 2 states could not be much more different. California is known as a pretty blue state, and Georgia is known as a pretty red state. I'll just leave that there and let you guys argue it out in the comments. We're going to dive into this a little deeper a little bit later, but the home prices could not be any more different as well. So let's talk about some of the similarities between these 2 states. Number 1, human beings live in both states. Some other similarities, both states have cities. Another similarity I wanted to point out is traffic. Atlanta is well known for horrible traffic, and I spent a lot of time in LA and surrounding areas, and traffic over there is equally as horrible, if not worse. Both states have sports teams. That's a similarity. So I'm gonna say that this is a similarity. Both states have mountains, but Georgia's mountains are really hills compared to California's mountains, obviously. The weather in Southern California is amazing, like 75 degrees year round. And in Georgia, there are some times of the year when the weather feels like Southern California, but it's usually for only about 5 minutes in the spring and maybe the fall. We're gonna get into a little bit more depth here so we can give you a real idea of what it's like to live in each of these states. So number 1 is gonna be cost of living. I'm gonna pull up a graphic on the screen right here, and this graphic right here is very telling. So the overall cost of living in California is about 150% or 50% higher than the rest of the USA. And by contrast, Georgia is just a shade under, so it's a little cheaper. And the cost of living in Georgia is about 5%, 5.5% less than the rest of the country. The big one here, and this one sticks out, and everybody knows it costs a lot of money to live in California. Median home cost, about $685,000 in California, and the average in the US is about $291,000, $292,000, and in Georgia, it's about $240,000. Massive difference there, of course. The other one I want to talk about real quick is total housing cost to just run a household. California is about 135% higher than the rest of the country, and Georgia is about 18% lower. Big difference there, of course. I've had people come over from California, buy a house in Georgia, and just be absolutely shocked at the size of house and the amount of land they can get for the same amount as a smaller house in California. Now we're going to zoom down into the larger cities and the cost of living in some of these larger cities. A really large city in Georgia is Atlanta, so we're going to use that as a contrast to LA and San Francisco. Trust me, I'm fully aware that these cities could not be any more different, but we're just comparing the largest cities. So this first line right here, you can see that there's about a 61% difference between cost of living in LA versus Atlanta. Most notably, you guessed it, is the housing cost. And the big one, which is no surprise to anyone, is the median home cost. In LA, it's right around $883,000, which boggles my mind. And Atlanta is about $334,000, which is about a $550,000 difference to buy a home, which equals out to about 164% difference. Is 164% more expensive to buy a house in LA versus Atlanta. So that is really one of the main reasons why people choose to move from California to Georgia, just because it's so much cheaper to buy a house. As you can see too on the rest of this chart, a lot of these categories are pretty close, but housing is by far the most expensive difference, and then transportation is a close second, with it being a little bit more expensive. Some of these categories are pretty close between these two cities, LA and Atlanta, but the housing, of course, is going to be a lot more expensive, and transportation is a good bit more expensive in LA versus Atlanta. Also, this is no surprise to anyone, it's very expensive to live in San Francisco, but we're going to just show you a comparison here so you can see the difference. San Francisco is 123% more expensive to live. This is even more mind-boggling. The median home cost in San Francisco is about $1.5 million, just under $1.5 million. And like I mentioned earlier, Atlanta's around $334,000, a difference of only 340%. Now, I get it. You're like, hey, yeah, but I'm also living in San Francisco, which is a great place. Sure, but you got to make so much more money to be able to afford a house over there. And the differences between San Francisco and Atlanta across the board are a lot more than LA to Atlanta, but that housing price alone it doesn't even hardly make sense. So we're going to throw another comparison at you, but an income of about $200,000 in Atlanta, if you want to have that same lifestyle in San Francisco, you need to make about $446,000 a year. And to maintain a lifestyle of about $200,000 in Atlanta, in LA, you need to make about $322,000. I know we're diving deep on the numbers here, but I think this is really important just to show the differences between the two states. So we're going to talk about taxes now, and I know you love talking about taxes, but this is a reality that we need to show everyone. The state income in California is one of the highest in the country, as you can see on this map, and then Georgia is right there in the middle. So your dollar is going to go a lot further in Georgia than it will in California, across the board really. California is a great place to live, of course, with that economy being the 5th largest in the world. You're going to have a lot of job opportunities there. Tech jobs are really popular. Everybody knows there are a lot of tech jobs, especially around San Francisco. You've got Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google. You've got Nvidia, you've got Apple, you got so many large companies in California. This is crazy. We pulled this stat just a second ago, but 10% of the Fortune 1000 companies are headquartered in California. That's pretty wild. By contrast, Georgia has about 3.3% of the Fortune 1000 companies. But I've heard this on the news a lot, and we did a little bit of research on this, but a lot of companies are leaving California. I'll just name a few, and these are just what I found online. Tesla, American Airlines, Lucas Oil, Oracle, Charles Schwab, and even Pabst Brewing, which I thought Pabst Brewing was in like Milwaukee or something. And economy-wise, like I mentioned, Georgia is ranked somewhere in the top 30 in the world. And I've mentioned this in some of my other videos. There are a lot of Fortune 500 companies headquartered in Atlanta, most notably Home Depot, UPS, Delta Airlines, and Coca-Cola. And one interesting thing to note, for 9 straight years, Georgia has ranked the #1 most favorable state for business. And this is according to Area Development Magazine. And I think that's a pretty interesting stat. And there's a reason why there's so many companies and so many people moving to Atlanta. One thing I wanted to mention that was interesting is that Georgia's film industry is growing by leaps and bounds. Lots of major motion pictures are filmed in Georgia and around Atlanta specifically. A lot of film studios are building sound stages in Atlanta, which that's a kind of a cool similarity, of course, between Atlanta and Hollywood, which everybody knows Hollywood is film capital of the world. But I think Atlanta's a close second, and I think it's only going to continue to grow. I don't know, this is just fun to me, but some of the movies that were filmed in Georgia that I can think of would would be Avengers Endgame. I think some of the Hunger Games movies were filmed in Georgia. Black Panther was filmed in Georgia. And then from TV perspective, Walking Dead was filmed in Georgia, and Stranger Things. From Stranger Things, real quick, I wanted to mention this. Do you remember the scene where Vecna basically attacked or took over Chrissy's body? You know, and Eddie Munson is freaking out. He doesn't know what to do, and Chrissy's body is thrown up to the ceiling, all that crazy stuff. I actually have a friend who lives very close to that trailer park, and he was like, man, you want to go drive by and see that trailer park? Still haven't done it, but maybe next time I'm down there, I'll go check it out. Since I'm a North Georgia real estate agent, I did want to show you a contrast between two different houses. One's going to be in North Georgia, and one's going to be out near LA. All right, real quick, we're going to jump into some real estate. This will be very interesting. So first, we're going to jump into this first house listed by Compass. This house is in North Hollywood. It is listed at $975,000, 7,800 square foot lot, $660 per square foot, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Looks like the house is about just under 1,500 square feet. That gives you a little bit of an idea of what you can buy for $1 million close to LA there. So for the exact same price, $975,000, you can have a 3 bedroom, 3 bathroom, 3,500 square foot house on 6.34 acres. And it turns out to be somewhere around $275 a square foot, which is less than half of what we were seeing in North Hollywood on the other house that we just saw. Also wanted to mention that this one is listed by Sellers Realty of Dahlonega. But yeah, 2 different areas completely, but you can get a massive house with amazing mountain views on over 6 acres in Dahlonega for the same price as a house that's just a little less than 1,500 square feet in North Hollywood. Of course, North Hollywood and North Georgia are drastically different, but just wanted to show you that contrast. So if you are thinking about moving to North Georgia, please give me a call. My contact info is on the screen. What did you think about our contrast between Georgia and California? I know it's crazy. I know it's completely different, but we wanted to just throw some stark contrasts out there. Leave me some comments. Let me know what you think. If there's anything I missed, throw it down in the comments and we can have a conversation about it. Have a great day, and we will see you on the next video.